another new edition of Windows and Current Affairs, and speaking before Al-Azhar and Al-Awqaf Ministry, President Al-Sisi on New Year's, of course the year 2015, have been giving a speech, and Egyptian President, known to every Egyptian now as a vocal supporter for a renewed vision of Islam, has openly called for a renewal of the religious discourse here in Egypt. Why? Because Islam, or the or the issue of misinterpreting Islam, the original rulings of Islam have posed great dangers for Islam, on top of all, posing Egyptian and Muslims themselves as terrorists. Of course, we're going to get into many details why the whole world is seeing Islam as an element that could cause terrorism, chaos, and lots of dangers and lots of threats that could be directed to national security of countries, which is not true, of course. This is what we're going to discuss today in this edition of Windows and Current Affairs, and we're very delighted to have with us Dr. Mehanna, the political analyst. Good evening, Dr.
Good evening, and thanks for having me.
Same here. Among the things that President Sisi said in his speech before Al-Azhar and the Al-Awqaf Ministry is the corpus of Islam texts or rulings. Of course, there isn't a religious cleric or an Azhar scholar here present with us, but we are going to address the political background, the social background, a thorough look over changing the religious discourse in Egypt, and how important is it? He talked about the corpus of Islamic texts and ideas that we have neglected proofreading before, and that have misused and re-edited the rulings of that came in Quran and changed it and misinterpreted it and antagonized the whole world. It doesn't make any sense, he said in his words, that 1.6 billion people, which is the population of the Muslims, should want to kill the rest of the world, which are 7 billion, just because they want to live.
Yeah.
So this is a big problem.
I think President Sisi has a vision of what Islam should be, and he's got a clear understanding of moderate Islam, which Azhar promotes all the time. I think he also kind of touched on the extremism in terms of dealing with terrorists. I think what he referred to here is a misunderstanding of religious rulings, as you kindly mentioned. Is also a deviation from the main course of Islam, spreading peace and security for the entire world, seeing that is particularly coming from the threats opposed by Daesh or ISIS and the rest of these groups, Al-Qaeda and Muslim Brotherhoods, etc. So I think he's working on the other 50%, to which we probably talked about before. The 50% of fighting terrorism is fighting people that carrying weapon with the same kind of weapon. But on the other side, the society itself needs to be reformed culturally, religiously, and socially in order to close the tab that always breeds terrorists, and that pool that always provides terrorist groups with individuals that can be attracted to continue terrorist attacks. And I think he's working on the society itself, and I think this is quite important in terms of reforming the understanding of what Islam is all about. Islam, as Prophet said, that he will be the advocate of non-Muslim if he's been harmed or hurt by a Muslim himself. So he spreads peace and security, and he lived with the Jews in Medina, he lived with Christians, so there isn't really any kind of rules that enforce Muslims or kind of makes Muslim hate the non-Muslims. And I think also President Sisi gave a great example in terms of attending the rituals of the Coptic during the Infinity. Here, definitely Azhar needs to have a major role in that, and Azhar has really been passive for quite some time, and that's the main cause behind the deviation from the main course of moderate Islam. So I think President Sisi now has acknowledged the fact that Azhar has to play a major role, because he's going to be against them in the day of judgment, as he expressed, that they are responsible for correcting the concept of Islam, not just internationally, but here on the ground level, but Egyptians and Arabs and Muslims overall cannot fight the rest of the world just for them they want to live by kind of forcing or spreading certain ideologies, taking half the truth. Islam ensures peace and security, and therefore terrorism by all means is forbidden by Islam. And we've seen the major statements or the formal statements came out for others saying that they are against any threats whatsoever from any groups, whether inside Egypt or outside.
Right. The step taken by President to surprise the Coptic Orthodox Church, and while they were singing and doing the mass for the Nativity, celebrating the Nativity and Christmas, the Orthodox Christmas Day. Well, that is a very important step that was taken on the head of state's part, because not only it reflected modernization by the president and by his his own program as a president and his own thinking, unlike the Western media is trying to reflect, but also it has drawn a lesson of citizenship to the whole world.
Civil society. I think he's building a new civil society.
How important to see that
vision. Absolutely, as a leader of this nation, elected by the majority, I think he's playing a major role in creating a new civil society with different vision, different understanding of what citizenship is all about. It's about brotherhood. It's about living in peace and harmony, irrespective of what religion we believe in or whatever ideologies we believe in. And I think the Christians and Muslims in Egypt have always been partners. We've seen that in 1919 revolution, we've seen that in 1952, we've seen that in 67, in 73, and in June 30th and before January 25th. So I think he was renewing the spirit of the Egyptians to maintain the civil society structure, maintain the citizenship, and maintain their loyalty to each other, whether they are Christians or Muslim. And we can also go back 1400 years when Prophet Muhammad said that Egypt will be opened for Muslims or for the Arabs, and he instructs Muslims to look after the Christians because they are basically the Arabs' uncles, because Hajar, the Prophet Ibrahim's wife, was Egyptian, so that was the first time. And the second time, Maria, the Copt, the Prophet Muhammad's wife, who gave him his baby Ibrahim, became the uncles of the Arab for the second time. So I think Prophet Muhammad basically instructed Muslims to look after the Copts because they're very good people, they have faith, and they're also the closest to the Muslims in terms of faith. And Muslims and Christians throughout the history have really given great examples in terms of unity and solidarity in protecting Egypt and its nation. And I think the curse of the Muslim Brotherhood has also, despite the negativity or despite the problems, it actually renewed that solidarity and the unity between the Muslims and Christians, and it shall continue.
Of course it has done that, and more than that also. But let us go back to the speech, the important speech that was given by President Sisi at that particular day. He referred in particular to the religious clerics, which are part of the problem. Of course, when we talk about religious clerics, there are two issues related to those clerics. The first one is sometimes some of them are not accredited by Al-Azhar, and that's why their discourse becomes a lifetime bomb that could explode at any moment, that is also implanted in the minds of the youth. And the young people, and the people who are illiterate, and people who are in poor areas and in shanty towns and this. So how important is monitoring the religious clerics and regulate their discourse?
I think discussed earlier, I think Azhar was a bit passive over the past 30, 40 years, playing not negative role, but not really turning a blind eye over what's happening. And the clerics have misled in many occasions and in many places the youth by planting ideologies that are totally wrong and promoting violence. And we've seen in the 90s, which the former President Mubarak was fighting that by all force, what happened from jihadis, the Muslim Brotherhoods, and different forms of Al-Qaeda terrorist group. They were basically dealing with matters of society by force, killing people, burning places. So I think here we've got a problem with an ideology that's been spreading in the absence of Al-Azhar. That's number two. Number one. I think the second one, in terms of the clerics, the